Hello, planet Earth. Welcome to my YouTube channel. We're at IDK, my BFF Jill 730.
My BFF Jill 730.
I'm Preston L. Young, wishing you warm salutations and congratulations as always. You've made your way to the Buffington Post.
You are invited!
Alright, so today we're taking a break from the Buffyverse because I'm 2 weeks late talking about Season 3 of The Leftovers. So I'm going to touch briefly on our season premiere, The Book of Kevin, and then I'll go a little bit more in depth on this past week's episode, Don't Be Ridiculous. And so without further ado, let's talk about The Leftovers. Here we go.
The time has come!
If you want to view paradise, simply look around and view it. Anything you want to do it. Want to change the world, there's nothing to it.
Alright, so 2 weeks ago we got The Book of Kevin. It's really kind of crazy making because The Book of Kevin, but I wasn't really excited to get out here and talk about it because it felt very kind of latter half of seasons of Lost, you know what I mean? It felt like there were more questions and more kind of not necessarily world building, well I guess world building, because we were doing a lot of catch up. Once again, we are 3 years after where, kind of we left off. When we opened in season 1, it was the 3-year anniversary of the sudden departure, and now here we are. We have another 3-year jump from the kind of the main event. The main event being, kind of like season 2 and Kevin's whole, I come back from the dead stuff. And so we're filling in all these gaps. We're trying to like figure out what the what is, like where's Lily, how are John and Lori doing this, and so for the most part it was just I guess you could call it world building, but it's just playing catch up really. And so it didn't really give me, the Book of Kevin didn't really give me that emotion that I go to The Leftovers for. I will say the cold open really did with the kind of like the flashback to the folks on the roof and all that good stuff, and maintaining your faith even when everybody else has given up on their faith, and The Leftovers has a lot to say about faith and what you do with it and how you relate to it and all that good stuff. And so I really loved the cold open. The cold open gave me more feels than anything for the next 50 minutes. And so that's the main problem I had with it, was because I come to The Leftovers to feel, and in particular to grieve. The Leftovers came to me at a point like right after my father had died, and so I really gravitated toward it because it was exploring these themes of grief and loss and perception of reality and how you put your life back together after something you just can't control. And so the Book of Kevin didn't really have that for me. There was a lot of intrigue and a lot of like mystery, and we find out that Matt is kind of turning Kevin into Jesus, which is like fucked up because Matt, I've always admired about him that his faith is absolute. His faith is his characteristic. He believes even when the whole world is showing him all the reasons not to. Like, he believes, and I really admire devout characters. I don't have that. I don't have a God that I subscribe to and that I look to for answers about things. I just don't. But I really admire people who have genuine faith. And so to see Matt kind of put his Christianity on the back burner for his like Kevinism, it's really weird. Because if you're like a Christian, if you really believe the tenets of the New Testament and everything, you believe that there are going to be no more new prophets. When your Jesus comes back, it's going to be Jesus like coming back, you know what I mean? And so that's all really wacky. And so for him to kind of put Kevin up on this pedestal, it's kind of blasphemous from a purely Christian standpoint. I grew up in church, like I know my Bible and stuff like that, but it's it really struck me that Matt was so gung-ho to actually write a new gospel about Kevin. So that's weird. And we'll see how all of that goes. We haven't really read this book at all, and I don't imagine we will until like episode 4 or 5 actually get into what the book actually says. But that's what's going on with Matt, and of course Mary. I feel like one of the reasons that Mary is leaving him is because he has kind of abandoned his faith. I mean, I guess on the surface he hasn't really abandoned his faith. He's just trying to, like, you know, Book of Mormon his faith. You know, read a whole New Testament. It's kind of fucked up. But anyway, and so I could see Mary leaving him because, you know, that's what I love about Matt is his faith and his devotion to Christ. And so I'd leave him because, you know, that's not the person you fell in love with. Like, anyway. And so we've got John and Lori, and, yeah, super weird. They're running this whole charlatan gamble. But, it's fine. I like that last season we had John, and he couldn't believe, right? Like, he could not believe. And Lori, what she did in Off-Ramp was she was taking people out of the GR, and she was saying, here you are, you have all of this, like, guilt and grief and remorse over whatever you got. But she was pulling them out of the GR, but she wasn't giving them anything. She was emptying them without putting anything back in. And so here she's learned, like, you can use your skills as a psychiatrist, or maybe she's just a clinical psychologist. I think she's a legit psychiatrist. You can use those skills, but you can, you know, do a little flash and mirrors and all that good stuff and make people think it's magic. And because we live in a world where the unexplainable has happened, you know, people are more willing to suspend their disbelief when it comes to, like, magic and mysticism. And so what she's doing with John is they're giving these people, you know, a false sense of hope, but it is hope. And whichever way you can get that, Lori sees that is okay. Like, people need something. And what she and John are doing is really legitimately giving these people some amount of closure that they can have. And it's not necessarily respectable, but it's admirable at the same time, because, you know, people are going to do what they're going to do. They're going to explain away their experiences and their perception of reality in one way or another. And so if you can play into that and genuinely help them to come to grips with some part of their lives and some grief of theirs, it's really kind of beautiful. It's kind of fucked up and scary, but it's kind of beautiful, and that's The Leftovers. You know, we've got this whole, like, future Nora, what the heck, I don't know what to think about it. I'm not even going to go there. What I found really interesting in this episode was people who were wearing white. You know, we had in the cold open the people who went up on top of their homes and they were, like, waiting to be taken, and they're all wearing white. And then the way that we transition from them to the guilty remnant, what's left of the guilty remnant in the Miracle Visitor Center. And then the fact that later on we have Matt, when he's baptizing everybody, he's dressed in white as well. And we've got Kevin, he's wearing his black shirts, but you can see his white shirts are hanging up right there in the closet. And it's like everybody throughout the series has gone all white. Like, they wear all white at one point or another. And it's just something that I noticed. I noticed that without the guilty remnant being in the picture, it's kind of up to us all to be the guilty remnant. And in a way, everybody who still is here post-departure is a living reminder, you know? Especially a character like Nora. She is a reminder of everything that she lost, because she lost everything. And so, like, there she is. And we had in Don't Be Ridiculous, she's in her white robe. It's just pretty interesting, and I really pick up on what people are wearing a lot of time, even though maybe I ought not to. So, like I said, I didn't have a big problem with the Book of Kevin, but it didn't make me feel, which is what I go to The Leftovers for. And so, moving on to Don't Be Ridiculous, it was everything that I go to The Leftovers for. It's about grief and Nora's grief and how she wants it, but she can't deal with having it. She has a tattoo, and we find out that, you know, she had broken her arm on purpose to cover up this tattoo, that she was covering up another tattoo of her children. It's like, she has this grief, and for so long it has defined her. When she was living in Mapleton, everyone knew who she was based on her loss, and that grief really did define who she was. And back in Guest, when she goes to Wayne, she is trying to stifle that grief, to push it down, to release it, to just separate herself and her identity from this grief that really defines her. Whereas when we go into season 2 in Lens, we have her throwing a rock through Erica's window because these girls who everyone thinks have departed, Nora knows that they haven't departed, and Erica is trying to basically like hijack Nora's grief. That's her grief to have. Her family really did depart, and whatever's going on with Evie and the other girls, it's awful and it's terrible, but it's not Nora's grief, and nobody else is entitled to that because it's something that's very much her own. And so when you look at Guest and when you look at Lens, you're looking at these two extremes, and what we get in Don't Be Ridiculous is Nora kind of riding the waves of those extremes. She's kind of tethered to both extremes, and she is somewhere in the middle. And I really like that because Nora is her grief. How do you lose your family, like your nuclear family, and not have like a seriously defining element of yourself to be found there? It's really interesting, and it's really heartbreaking, because Nora, every time we get an episode that's about Nora, she's so calm and kind of pristine, but dynamic and lovely, and the performance that we get out of Carrie Coon is just beautiful. And we have her, she went to Holy Wayne. She was willing to put herself out there and say, okay, take it away, like take my pain. But she's not willing to extend that same kind of suspension of disbelief to Kevin. And I would imagine that she's been told like what has happened to Kevin with him dying and going to the hotel and all this extra. I would imagine that he's told her that, and I don't understand why she's not willing to believe. Like, on the one hand, she's a skeptic, but on the other, she does put herself in these situations that seem fantastical, like her deciding to go to Australia in order to get hit with all the radiation to maybe make it out to the other fucking side. It's really weird. And I think on the one hand, it's because Nora doesn't want for Kevin to be anything kind of supernatural. I think she's almost in denial about that, but at the same time, it's like she's been burned by that before, because here she Holy Wayned it up, and then whoop-de-doo, there were these loved ones in her living room, and so, her grief wasn't taken away. It's still there. And what I like about this is, like, Nora, her grief is still there, and she wants to deal with that, and she wants to cope with it, but at the same time she wants to cover it up. And at the same time she wants to explore every avenue that might bring her children back to her. And speaking of children, like, how many children can this woman lose? She gave Lily back to Christine. And I think what that all really comes down to is the fact that that's what she wants. Lily was hers. She was hers. But at the end of the day, she wasn't hers, and she gave her back to her mother. And that's what Nora wants for someone to do with her. She wants for someone to give her children back to her. And that's really profound, and it's crazy making, because how can you relate? It's like what the conversation with Erica. There's a body. She got to bury Evie. Nora doesn't get that, and this goes back to it being her own grief. It's not something that anybody else can really have. It's something that's hers, and I love that scene between Erica and Nora, because where last season we had that great, big, long, drawn-out scene in Lens, and they were very much at odds. Here, they're so on the same page, but at the same time, Erica realizes she could never really get on Nora's level. And also, in Don't Be Ridiculous, we have Nora, and she's really making it her mission to out the truth about Tower Man, which again goes back to kind of owning her grief and not letting anybody steal that grief away from her or try and appropriate that grief. It's something that's hers. And what I find to be really fascinating about this particular episode is we have Matt, who back in season 1 was not putting up with this notion that everyone who departed was just this great idyllic human being. What he was doing then was he was going around with his flyers and he was posting them up everywhere saying, don't be fooled, this wasn't the rapture. Like, these people had serious flaws. There are lies being told about these people. And so for Nora in this episode, she really takes on that season 1 Matt persona, where she's making it her mission to say, no, this is not the truth. This is not what happened. And you can't live in this lie. You can't base someone's life and death around a lie. It's not fair to that person, it's not fair to everyone else, and it's not fair to Nora. And so the fact that she has become more like Matt is just really fascinating in this space where Matt is no longer very much himself, going back to him kind of semi-abandoning his Christianity and being kind of blasphemous when it comes to Kevin. The idea that that Matt isn't filling his own space anymore, and the idea that Nora is, and her being his sister, it's almost like, are we going to kind of like a Moses narrative with this whole situation? It's really fascinating, and I found that whole juxtaposition of season 1 Matt and season 3 Nora just to be really beautiful. And when she puts the picture of Tower Man up, it is very evocative of what Matt was doing with the posters. So all of that, it's so beautiful. Like, I love the show because of what it does in exploring grief and pain and loss and the continuation of life. Everybody will tell you that life is short. Everybody will tell you life is short, but life is long. Life can feel unbearably long. The living of life can be unfathomably long. It's just it's crazy, especially when you're dealing with how you identify as an individual without certain people in your life, and with certain people in your life, and with this defining moment in your life, and should that be the moment that defines you, and will that be the moment that defines you? I think those are all things that Nora is wrestling with in this episode, and I think that that's something that that The Leftovers is just wonderful at articulating and making really kind of tactile and yet intellectual and emotional all at the same time. So Don't Be Ridiculous is like all the stars, like all the thumbs, like it's so good. I'm just really looking forward to seeing where we go from here. We finally have Nora finding out about what Kevin's doing with a fucking bag over his head. Like, come on now. I don't know how much to believe Kevin, because here they are. They said at the beginning of season 2 they weren't going to be lying to each other, but here they are. They're lying to one another. And she's still lying to him. She's saying, oh, I have to go to Australia for work. And so I just don't know how these people are going to move forward, but that's been the case since day 1, episode 1, and I'm just really fascinated to see where we go from here. And we'll talk more about the women in Australia after tomorrow's episode, when we deal with Kevin Sr. and Australia. But I was reminded of the penultimate episode of season 1, wherein we flash back and we saw what happened on the day of the sudden departure. And, Kevin was out for his walk and he was like smoking a cigarette, and these women drove into town and they were looking for Kevin. And they were presumably looking for the chief of police. And the thing about it is, they thought they were looking for Kevin Sr., but they were really looking for Kevin Jr. And the problem is, he wasn't the chief of police yet. And so they didn't realize that they were, in fact, looking for Kevin, who is now chief of police in a completely different part of the nation. And hey, he's coming to Australia. And I love it. I'm so glad The Leftovers is back. I kind of hate that it's the last season. I won't say it, but anyway, I'm so glad that we've had so much of The Leftovers, and knowing that that we are going to be ending it. Even though The Leftovers, maybe they'll never have closure, knowing that we do have a final point that we're getting to. It's almost like us having closure. And so, anyway, Planet Earth, let me know what you thought of the Book of Kevin and Don't Be Ridiculous in the comment section down below. I'm Preston L. Young. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and as always, question. You can come right back here to the Buffington Post anytime for Buffy the Vampire Slayer reviews, Angel reviews, Buffyverse discussions, discussions on the other Slayers, and more. The Leftovers review. That's pretty much it. Hope you're having a great 2017 so far, everybody. Have a great day today, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
I've been traveling these wide roads for so long. My heart's been far from you. 10,000 miles gone. Oh, I wanna come near and give you every part of me. But there's blood on my hands, and my lips are unclean. In my darkness I remember Mama's words reoccur to me. Surrender to the good Lord, and He'll wipe your slate clean. Take me to your river, I wanna go. I'll go on, take me to your river, I wanna know. Tip me in your smooth waters, I go in as a man with many crimes, come up for air as my sins flow down the Jordan. Oh, I wanna come near and give you every part of me, but there's blood on my hands, and my lips are unclean. Take me to your river, I wanna go. I'll go on, take me to your river, I wanna know.
My BFF Joe 730.